Alright, so a couple of cards have been revealed that are going to be released in Dragons of Legend. So that set where they're bringing a bunch of anime cards and whatnot into the game. And a couple have gotten some hype recently, so I'm going to discuss those two one at a time. The first one that I'm going to discuss in this video is Kuribandit. And one of my friends messaged me the other day saying, oh, have you heard of Kuribandit? And I was like, what? What is this? I was like, oh yeah, it's getting a lot of hype. And I just ignored it. I thought there was something completely unrelated. I was like, nah. Carried on with my life, and then it came up, and I read it, and I was like, this is pretty interesting. So the effect of Kuribandit is during the end phase, if this card was normal summon this turn, you contribute this card, excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, and add one spell or trap among them to your hand, and send the rest to the grave. First off, this is a lot fairer than its anime effect. Like if you've read its anime effect, it's like draw 5 cards and then send any monsters to the grave. So, thankfully it didn't get the anime effect. But there have been a lot of opinions on this card. Mainly a lot of people really hyping it up, and this is a general trend in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Like people will see a card and then just hype it and hype it. They'll say, oh, it's broken, look, oh, it's so strong, look at, oh, it's so powerful. And they end up learning whether or not the card actually is that strong later on. An example being Exiton Knight. Like when Exiton Knight got revealed, a lot of people were like, oh my god, it's so powerful, it's like a rank 4 Black Rose, oh, it's broken, nah, it's so strong. And it turns out that, like, anyone who wasn't in a pleb, like, realized that Exiton is quite a well-designed card. I mean, it isn't the sort of thing that you want to exist, because no one likes field nukes, really. It's not the best design, but Exiton goes about such an effect within a well-balanced parameter as far as design goes. It's a pretty balanced card in terms of design. So this is another one of those things I've seen people posting all sorts of things talking about how broken it is. So I'll talk about a couple of things. Firstly, Sylvans. Obviously, in the video where I talked about Sylvans and why they weren't good, I said that they needed some kind of push via a TCG exclusive to really give them that boost to potentially make them good. And while this isn't like a TCG exclusive in Primal Origins, that's it. I was like, what? No, it isn't Primal Origins, is it? But yeah, in Primal Origins, it isn't an exclusive in that set, but it's still something that's coming out within the foreseeable future that really boosts Sylvans. Obviously, it's like it's excavate the top 5, add a spell or trap to your hand, and then all the others are excavate, so you can trigger potentially up to 5 Sylvans in one go through one card. So that's good. That's obviously good. And they obviously knew that would be the case by wording it excavate. They essentially were like, yep, go ahead, Sylvans, have fun with this. And also Light Swans, because it's like Light Swans, yes, they would prefer it if it said like mill and then add one, but the point of Light Swans now isn't to mill. It's just to send. Like, you want to get the Eclipse Wyvern in the grave so that you can get the JD, so that you can summon it and win the game. So it's just turboing into the JD via Eclipse Wyvern. So the fact that it is send to the grave rather than send from the deck to the grave doesn't make it any less good in Light Swans. Sure, it won't trigger Wolf or Felis or anything like that, but it will send the Eclipse Wyvern to the grave, which is which is good enough. Like, that's the whole point of the deck. You get people playing like Needlebug Nest and random bollocks like that, and this does the same job essentially, except except it might even trade. Like, you might get a solar recharge out of it or something like that, which is you know, it's really good in Light Swans, in those two decks. So people talking about that, yeah, honestly, like, the card is great in those two decks, and it's just it's a better card E for those types of decks essentially. It lets you do more. However, it isn't broken. Firstly, as a card, in terms of individual card design, it's an incredibly well designed card. Like, it's honestly a very well designed card. Some people are like, oh, it's painful choice. It's nothing like painful choice. Painful choice, you get to cherry pick 5 cards from your deck and get one of them to your hand and the others to the grave. So you can, like, reveal all 4 dragon rulers and something else, and then either way you'll get 4 of them or something. Like, it's essentially, that is what it is. Like, to compare this with painful choice is a joke. Like, in terms of the way that that they are worded, I guess the fact that it's 5 cards from the deck, 1 to the hand, the rest to the grave. But that's as much as the similarities go. That's as far as the similarities go. I mean, this is nothing like painful choice. This is the closer comparisons would be to duality, to card D, maybe to card trooper. Those are the sorts of things that you should be comparing it to, not painful choice. It's nothing like painful choice. Just as a base card design, its effect is like, it's like duality, but you check the top 5 and then add a spell trap. But it's during the end phase, so because of that, and it can only happen when it's normal summoned. So it's like card E, except it grants you your battle phase, but it doesn't get you that +1 that card E does. You risk getting the -1, or or just break even at best. And also everything else gets sent to the grave, which doesn't make it as splashable as card D and duality are. Like, on the article that Konami posted, they were like, oh, you can play this in Gigias and Fire Fist. Like, you wouldn't play Kuribandit over card D in a deck like +1 Fire Fist. Gigia is a bad example, because with Gigia you wouldn't play card D or Kuribandit, because the deck already has enough dependable normal summons. Like, with Gigias, in terms of deck building, Gigia is incredibly easy to build, in the sense that, like, you don't have to fiddle around with monster counts. You have the 13 card Gigia engine or whatever it is. Those 13 cards, you have them, and then you really don't need to add anything onto that. You don't need to add like glue cards to make them better that are good normal summons. Things like card D, Thunder King. You don't need to add those cards, because you already have 6 normal summons in Armor and Arsenal. That's a lot, and like, you just don't need it. You don't need to add those sorts of things. So you wouldn't add Kuribandit or card D. That's a bad example on Konami's part. But for 4-axis Fire Fist, yes, you can potentially, like, reveal Tenki and then send Bear to 2 to the Wolf Part, but you wouldn't. You would rather have the extra card. So in decks that are just more +1 oriented, that sort of have the structure that I described earlier in the Sylvan video, when I was criticizing Sylvans, and I was saying that decks that use just simple +1s, cards that work better on their own, that tend to have the structure of low monster count, moderate spell count, high trap count, split into thirds. I said 3-3-3 in the video. I meant thirds. But it's sort of like essentially a third monsters, a third spells, and a third traps. Those sorts of decks won't prefer Kuribandit. to card D, because firstly you'd rather the extra card, and secondly you don't want to mill 5 cards from your deck essentially, because that's the thing with Kuribandit. Everything that you don't add gets sent, and if you're going to be sending a bunch of monsters in a deck like Light Swans, if you're going to be excavating a bunch of Sylvans, then great, like you will love doing that, but not in a regular deck. A deck that plays more spells and traps, and that sets the tone for Kuribolt. Kuribandit. Kuribandit is like the card D for other sorts of decks. For decks that have higher monster counts, for decks that would rather get like the one card than get more cards and more variety and more consistency. Because the thing with Kuribandit is that it isn't as consistent as card D or Duality. Card D Duality, you know what you're getting with them every time, which is in the case of card D, 2 extra cards, and in the case of Duality, 1 card that you can choose. So Kuribandit is sort of like the exaggeration of Duality in terms of you get choice through the means of card D, in that you summon and then tribute in your end phase to reveal, but it doesn't have the consistency of either of them, because you can reveal 5 and they aren't spells and traps, and then you went -1 and essentially wasted a turn. Now that is fine if you're playing a deck like Light Swans, where it doesn't matter if you don't hit a spell trap, because you milled 5 and you've essentially done a Needlebug Nest or whatever. You've just fueled your grave. So to say that it is for degenerate decks would be a discredit to the card. The card is very well designed. The card we'll probably see play in the future in a different kind of deck, in a deck that is +1 oriented, but maybe just has more monsters and more things that you would want to send. An example might be my pure ruler build that I posted earlier. Like that is potentially a deck where you would rather have Kuribandit than card D. I think given my structure you might prefer card D, but if you play more dragons than I do, more of the aggressive type of structure, then you might prefer Kuribandit, because you either get something, and at worst you fuel your grave for your rulers. Like that sounds pretty good. So it depends. Like, it isn't as simple as I am necessarily making it out to be, but it isn't as simple as most people are making it out to be either, which is, oh my god, it's so broken. It really isn't. It is a very well designed card. It will see play in some decks, but it won't break the game or anything. I'm seeing some people saying it should be banned. Like, are you dumb? What do you mean this card should be banned? Like, what? It's at best a 1-for-1. And I know that that's simplifying it, but in terms of the way the card is designed, the problem isn't Kuribandit. So people seeing this like, oh my god, it's going to break Light Swans. It may very well break Light Swans. Like, Light Swans are already a deck that are just waiting to do well. They have all the support coming out. You play them in OCG, they're still good. And then now this as well. Like, it's perfectly foreseeable the Light Swans will be a good deck for this summer. 100% foreseeable. Like, because the situation with me is quite temperamental. I don't know what I'm going to play necessarily. I want to play artifacts, but I don't know if I'm going to be going to Euros. I might just spend like £5 on a Light Swan deck, because that's how much it costs. It's cheap as hell. It's a tad hyperbolic, but Solar Recharge got reprinted as well, so it's cheap. It's cheap. I might just spend like £10 on a Light Swan deck, stick 3 Kuribolt in it, and then know that I can still do well. Like, the card makes them more competitive. And for those of you that are like, rah, this makes Sylvans broken, it doesn't make Sylvans broken. The thing with Kuribandit, if I keep saying Kuribolt, then sorry. I don't care about the distinction between the Kuri cards. So yeah, I mean Kuribandit obviously. So if you summon Kuribandit and tribute and reveal 5, the problem with the excavation is that it's in the end phase. So excavating I almost said artifacts. Excavating Sylvans tends to come down to 2 things. Either they grant you destruction, or they allow you to re-add things from the grave to the hand. So if it re-adds a spell to the hand, then great, you get that +1 or whatever, you know, spell trap, whatever the level 7 tree does. It's like re-add a Sylvan spell trap from your grave to your hand. If it does that, then great, there's a +1, but you won't be able to use it until next turn. So that's just the same as what Kuribandit already is, in terms of if it adds a spell, then you can use it the next turn. If it adds a trap, then it's 2 turns. So, you know, it's okay. And in terms of the destruction is fine. If you reveal like all the destruction, then their field, then great. But firstly, as I think I previously mentioned that it's very comparable with Atlanteans, and that it's very reactive. You have to wait for your opponent to do things. So if you reveal the spell trap popper and they don't have any spell traps, then it's not good. But if they do, then it's good, and blah blah blah. It relies on your opponent having certain things. But also, it's in the end phase, but during your end phase. And probably the worst time to destroy things is during your own end phase, if you think about it. Like, the optimal time is during the opponent's end phase, realistically speaking, but just before your main phase, because then you are allowed to make a push. And as it stands, you can't do that. You can't, like, you can summon Kuribolt and special summon an attack. Like, that is an advantage of Kuribolt that Card and Duality do not possess. Kuribolt still lets you use your battle phase, so you can summon it poke for 1000, you can special summon whatever and do, you know, all whatever you want to do, but then use the effect. That's great, but it won't help if you're like, I really need to make a push. But they have these cards on the field that I can't deal with. Like, having the Kuribolt is still granting them an extra turn, even if you do excavate the removal. So again, it does help, but the extent that it helps is not as extreme as people like to make out. Like, oh my god, it breaks Sylvans. It doesn't. It really doesn't. It makes them okay. But back onto the previous discussion, the problem, if Lightsworns were to get better as a result of Kuribandit, isn't Kuribandit itself. It's the fact that Judgment Dragon is a stupidly powerful card. Like, if this leads to Lightsworns being played competitively, then fine. Like, I know that a lot of people will be very angry at that, and I don't like playing Lightsworn. I hate it. It is very annoying to play against. But, like, fine. You accept it. I would accept it. Because if it does see play, which it probably deserves to, on the basis of what else will be there, then it would potentially lead to Lightsworn being the most powerful deck, which I doubt. I still think Artifacts would be the most powerful deck, but I think that this would allow Lightsworns to offset Artifacts' monopolistic state a little bit. And in doing so, we might see Judgment Dragon get banned or something finally. We might see the deck hit as it deserves to be. And then when that happens, like, Kuribandit won't still be a problem. Kuribandit isn't a problem if Final Countdown gets banned, or if Judgment Dragon gets banned. It isn't a problem with Sylvans existing either. It really isn't. Like, it makes Sylvans playable, almost, but it isn't a problem, right? So just keep these things in mind. I don't think that it makes anything too broken. I think that it's good because it gives other decks that otherwise wouldn't stand a chance. It gives them that card. Decks that don't care as much about advantage and want to dig for a certain card, which tend to be degenerate but aren't always degenerate, will get a boost out of this card more so than Card-Cardian Duality. Card-Cardian Duality will remain to be better for decks that focus on grind aspects and prefer consistency to something like Kuribandit, because Kuribandit is not more consistent in terms of design, although it is a very well designed card. And some decks might be in between. But it's good that this card exists and they have that outlet, and it doesn't break anything. If Lightsworn happens to be pushed over the edge because of it, then so be it. Like, that's just how it is. But that's not Kuribandit's fault. That is the fault of the deck that it is supporting. Even if Sylvans happen to go over the edge, which, as you can tell, I doubt will happen because I dislike Sylvans, but not like I hate Sylvans, so you know, they won't do well. I'm like, no, I genuinely think that they won't do well, just from my own intellectual standpoint. But even if they were to do well, even if I turned out to be wrong, then the problem wouldn't be Kuribandit. Kuribandit is a very well designed card. Don't believe the hype. I think there's something that's cool about it as well, is that it's a tall guy target, but not a powerful tall guy target, i.e. Sangan. The thing is, people are like, oh well, people are on two sides of the fence. Either they're like, wow, it's so broken, it's a tall guy target, or meh, because if you summon it off tall guide, it does nothing. Like, the point isn't that it is Sangan version 2, like, you can summon it off tall guide and it's great, therefore you play 3 tall guide. The point is that it is a card that is good on its own, that happens to be a tall guide target, therefore tall guide becomes good. If you haven't noticed, the problem with tall guide is that it hasn't got any good targets. It had one. It had one. And that one was enough to see it played. In 3 in every deck, and also the power of rank 3s were a lot stronger at that point. But even so, Sangan banned, Tall Guide no longer played. Why? Because Tall Guide had nothing to get. They're like, yeah, Night Assailant. Like, Night Assailant isn't good on its own, and isn't enough to warrant playing Tall Guide. But, like, this doesn't mean 3 Tall Guide, 3 Kuribandit, by the way. Like, people were like, yeah, I can play 3 Tall Guide again. You might not. Like, it's closer to 3 Kuribandit, 1 Tall Guide. Or 3 Kuribandit, 2 Tall Guide, or something like that. It's you know, it's interesting. So this is quite long, but in conclusion, I like Kuribandit. I think it's a well designed card. I'm glad to see it in the game. It's nowhere near as broken as people think it is. But that's because it's not broken at all. It's very well designed. It boosts decks that deserve a boost, I would say. I wouldn't say light ones deserve a boost, but Sylvans needed something. This gives them that something, so great. Hopefully I'll get to see some when I go to tournaments and whatnot. Hopefully they will get played, because I don't like people investing in decks that don't do well. I don't like decks being released that don't do well. So hopefully this will push Sylvans, but I doubt they will push them to the point where they could compete with artifacts and light ones quite adequately. But yeah, it's a well designed card. It won't replace Card-Cardia, it won't replace Duality, but it's another option, and it's always good to have more options, I think. This will pretty much be what I'm saying, what I will say in the mathematician video as well, that will follow this. It's good to have more versions of the same thing that aren't broken, because more options are better, and this is a well-designed card. So thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever. If you disagree, if you think that this is the best card ever, well, that is bad somehow. If you're on either side of the fence, then comment or whatever. Or if you just want to say, wow, you are so amazing, then yeah, comment as well. But yeah, I'll see you around.